Many thanks to our sponsors who make this festival possible. A good goodbye. Funeral planning for those who don't plan to die. Bernalillo County and the Indigent Program, the Better Place Forests Organization, Bosque Trails Hospice, Conscious Crossroads End of Life Services, Death Doula Professionals, End of Life Options New Mexico, French Funerals and Cremations, Keeper Memorials, thank you for handling the Zoom on this whole festival, and Passages International. And we are continuing our exploration of unexpected deaths. And please welcome back to the stage. She did a great presentation yesterday, Kathy Dempsey.
All right, well, excellent. I'm so glad to be back today. After lunch, we're going to have an exciting interactive section. And so what I'd like to start, wow, you're zooming. I'd like to start over here, and I'd like you to count off. Okay? 2. 8. 9. 13. Okay, now don't forget your number. 13, and you'll be 14. All right. Write down your number somewhere so you don't forget your number because your clock is ticking. Are you ready?
Yes.
Yes.
All right, here we go. What is grief? What is grief? It's an inevitable response to a loss with mixed emotions. And death doesn't necessarily equal grief, and grief doesn't death, but a loss equals grief. And this must be dealt with. And all of us deal with it different ways because we're all unique individuals. Our mental models affect how we respond. Now, Dr. Kim Harms, as you know, she's a dentist, but I don't want you to disregard that. And I just want you to close your eyes for 10 seconds and think of the first 3 things that comes to your mind when you think of dentist, going to the dentist. Pain. Pain.
Okay.
Novocaine. All right. Money. That's a good one. That's a good one. Now, most of us, we would say that probably the mental models would be more negative than positive. Although my 4-year-old great grandnephew, Luke, he thinks it's awesome to go to the dentist because he's going to get candy. So anyway, but our mental models affect how we respond in life to everything. We do it almost unconsciously. Now, I'm going to share with you 3 foundational R's for shedding that you can use these skills in any situation in your personal life or Uh-oh. Number 8. Somebody have number 8? Will you raise your hand? Can you come on down, please?
Go to the light.
7, as you see it. You can choose your own chair. You're the first one here. All right. Excellent. Excellent. Now, there's a little challenges now that you're in heaven, unless you can't really communicate with the rest of us. But you can sit there and we're watching from above, right? Excellent. All right, let's go back to where we were talking about the 3 foundational R's of shedding. All right. The first is to release the attachment. Okay, now we talked about this yesterday about emotionally attaching to your stuff, ready? But from the time you were born, when you were inside that womb, I mean, think about it. It's warm, soft. It's just delightful. You didn't have to worry about anything. You didn't have to worry about paying the rent or the mortgage. You had a 9-month rent-free lease. You didn't have to about going to the grocery store or the kids saying, "Mom, what you gonna fix for dinner?" You had a 24/7 infusion of nutrition. Now, 9 months later, what happened? You were evicted. I mean, Mom decided to downsize. And what did somebody do with a pair of scissors? They cut that cord, right? And what do most of us do? We scream! And if we could have talked to that point in time, what do you think we would have said? Put me back in! Now, I will submit to you that was your first major shedding experience of this lifetime, this journey. And from the time that you were born, from the time that you die, and what we were talking about before I died, you will shed your body. You will go through lots of attachments and detachments, attachments and detachments, attachments and detachments. But they're not the physical ones, like the stuff we talked about. They're the emotional ones, even to the physical stuff. And so, as we navigate this lifetime, it's important for us to release the attachments that are no longer serving us. Shedding is all about letting go of those things that don't serve us anymore and taking on the new and moving forward. Now, there's 3 types of attachments that humans have tendency to over-attach to. The first one is roles. We like our roles. You know, I'm a nurse, I'm a doctor, I'm a social worker, I'm a doula, I'm a parent, I'm a child. You know, we get attached to our roles. Now, there's nothing wrong with having roles, but we need to realize that all roles will end one day. So what are you doing to prepare for your next role? Wonder if she's been preparing. Oh, okay. Next, we get attached to our things. And we spent a whole session yesterday about our stuff. And shed before we're dead, shedding that stuff. We like our stuff, right? And we get attached to the littlest things, even like, that's my pen. That's my pen. Don't take my pen. I love this big pen. You know, it doesn't have to be big stuff. We just get attached to stuff, right? And the last one is beliefs. Traditions. This is the way we've always done it. And as we go through life, we need to realize we need to be able to shed the roles, those things, and those beliefs that are no longer serving us. It's not about death, it's about transformation. And that Lenny was actually with me up in Wisconsin. We were up there for a few weeks taking a silent retreat, and this actual butterfly landed on Lenny's head, and we walked a mile back to the little cab we were at. So it's an actual picture of a real butterfly on Lenny's head. And you can see once you shed, then you'll transform into a different state. Now, we talked about Kubler-Ross's stages a little bit yesterday, but say them with me together as I put them up. First one is denial. Second, anger. Third, bargaining. Fourth, depression. And fifth, acceptance. And somebody mentioned yesterday that David Kessler actually has added one to his about meaning and finding meaning. But speaking of Kubler-Ross, when I went and had my death doula training up at the MAID Institute in New York, they were talking about Kubler-Ross's stages, and I said, no, I'm just going to Google her. And I Googled her, and she actually is buried 3 blocks from my house. And here's the picture. Gabriel and I have walked over her grave probably the last 16 years, quite a few times. I didn't even realize it. But it says she graduated to Dance in the Galaxies on August 24th, 2004. And she definitely was a pioneer in the field of death and dying. I love this quote from Steve Jobs. Death is very likely the single best invention of life. It's life's change agent. It clears out the old to make way for the new, which is about shedding. Now, I'm going to give you a little bit of a different stages of shedding that Kubler-Ross has kind of evolved as I've been in shedding for almost 30 years. And the first one, say it with me, we'll put it up there. Loss, anger, discouragement, acceptance, and celebration. Uh-oh. Number 10. Number 10, come on down. Here she goes. Oh, and get a little cloud bag and everything. Let's see what you like to choose. Sit by you. Okay, now you two can't talk either. So you can just observe and see what's happening in this session. Very good, very good. All right, now where were we? Yeah, we were talking about celebration. Now you must say, come on, this kind of looks something like Kubler-Ross stuff, but celebration? Yes, celebration is a part of shedding. Do you know you celebrate the most painful day of your life every single year? Yes. Some guy said to me, my anniversary. No, sir, no, sir, your wife's not sitting next to you. No, your birthday. We celebrate the most painful day of our life every single year, and we celebrate it. So I encourage you to start with celebration. Instead of starting with loss, start with the celebration. They're dropping my slides. This is number 2. Number 2. Yeah, you're celebrating. Come on down. Come on down. The stages of the 5 stages of change are not linear. They're more like an abnormal EKG. You have acceptance, which is the place of peace. And then you may go into discouragement, and then celebrate, and then you're going through loss, and then you're going to get angry. You may go up and down and up and down. That's part of the stages of grief. The big challenge is don't get stuck. Right? Don't get stuck. You know, zippers can suck. That's plenty zipper there. They got stuck. How many of you know somebody who's stuck in anger? Anybody? Yeah. I mean, what does that do when you're around them?
I don't want to be around.
You don't want to be around them at all. Exactly. So it's okay to be angry, just to be able to deal with anger in a healthy way. The number one biggest barrier to shedding is, everybody say it together with me, fear. Fear. Now, I was asked a few years ago to come into Disney and speak for them. And after I spoke, they took me on a really cool backstage tour. And do you know what I discovered? Walt Disney was afraid of mice. I mean, think about it. Come on. Walt's afraid of mice? So, what do you think Walt did? He said he was going to embrace his fear. He said, what if I make my fear with big ears and a big smiley face, and I'll call my fear Mickey. So Walt Disney embraced his greatest fear and transformed it into his greatest personal success. Now, there's always consequences if you don't embrace your fear, not only to you, but to other people. How many of you have ever been to Disney? Raise your hand. Again, happy birthday! Graduation time! Oh, wow. This is number 7. Number 7, come on down, wow. Got 1, 2, come on up. Come on up, oh, that's right, come on up. Thank you very much for saying that. Come on up. You have graduated. All right. And you get a hug from the angel and everything, and you get a goodie bag. I wonder what's on all this bag. All right. How are y'all doing? Everything thumbs up. All right. Okay. So there are consequences. And I said, how many of you have been to Disney? Raise your hand. Okay. Can you imagine all your childhood memories, your vacations, maybe some conferences, all wiped away because one person didn't embrace their fear? Wow. If Walt hadn't embraced his fear, there would be no Disney. There would be no Mickey Mouse. So we all need to embrace our fear. And what do we do then? Because there are scary times. Fear is part of one of our core emotions. Here's Angel Book, Gabriel, who was on Bob Pike's lap yesterday during the living funeral. And can you imagine, but I am afraid of three things. I think I told you yesterday, I'm afraid of speaking. I really am. And number two, I'm afraid of lizards. And number three, I'm afraid of dogs. Because I got bit when I was 5 years old. So what do I do now? I am a motivational speaker who runs around with Lenny and has a dog. So I probably unconsciously embraced my fears without realizing it, but it has brought me more joy than I can ever explain. I mean, I just got Gabriel 4 years ago. I mean, it was like 3 weeks before COVID hit. I mean, somebody must have known upstairs that I was going to be at home grounded for a long time, and I lived by myself, and I needed a companion. So the only thing about little Gabriel is he's deaf, and I think, up in the sky, you all probably know more about what's happening up there now, but I think what happened was Ron, you heard about Ron yesterday, and I think he was like saying, I need a volunteer to go down, COVID's gonna be hitting, Kathy's gonna be by herself, do we have any volunteers to go out and be here with her? And Gabriel probably raised his hands and said, I'll do it on one condition. I'm deaf, because I can't stand to listen to her 24/7 a day. But anyway, the interesting thing is Gabriel does not shed. And I didn't know that until all my friends said, hey, you're the queen of shedding? And you bought a dog that doesn't shed. And I'm like, well, yeah, I kind of did. But there are some things in life when you think about that we shouldn't shed. Right? Maybe our faith, our values, loved ones, those memories. So what do we need to do with our fear? We need to do with our fear is take action. Because fear plus action equals courage. And as we've been talking about end of life the last few days, it takes courage. Well, some fear there, unknowns, and you just keep moving forward. The second R strategy is to reframe the situation. Now, some changes may initially appear overwhelmingly negative, but usually given enough time, people come around and say, that was a blessing in disguise. I mean, think back on that day that somebody cut your cord. You were probably thinking, I'm having a really bad day. Right? But now, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 plus years later, you're thinking, that wasn't my worst day, that was my best day. I got life. I mean, can you imagine living your whole life being attached to your mother by the cord? Oh man, that'd be a drag. Even if you love your mom, right? So there's a syndrome that comes if you don't reframe, and that is above the neck constipation. Do you know what that is? You know what that is? Yeah, it's that stinking thinking. That stinking thinking that comes over us, and negativity, and it just can consume us. And some people that you work with have above the neck constipation. Some people that you live with may have above the neck constipation. And you might have above the neck constipation yourself. So Lenny has actually a formula. And the formula is a mental enema. Okay? A mental enema is going to help you get over above the neck constipation. Now, so we need just to clear our heads, okay? But I heard a lot of things happen with these deaths. I heard one of them was electrocuted. Another one was at a country fair. I think you may have been at a country fair. You almost were winning the contest, blueberry eating contest, and you choked on one and you died. Yeah, you remember that? Yeah. I think what happened to you is like a meteor ice cube thing came down from the sky and hit you and you're gone. Yeah. And no, I think you were skating skating and fell and had subdural hematoma and bled out. I'm sorry for all those situations. They were unexpected deaths, but they, yes. Okay, I'm sorry. Listen, where were we? Okay, we're going to ask you to see if you can focus on how. See if you can read that. I'm allergic to negativity. Okay, can I put this on your wrist? Now, all of a sudden, bam, you are allergic to negativity. Right? You can't be around it. All right, you're just allergic. Have you had your annual physical yet this year?
Not as such.
Not as such, but I know when you get one and you go to the doctors and they give you your little paper, you tell them you have a new allergy. You are now allergic to what? Negativity. Exactly. So if anybody comes up to you and says anything negative, you're just gonna tell them to shit. Okay? All right. So do you know, Susie, they cut my budget. You know who our boss is. Get rid of them. I can just shut them. All right. I like that. All right. Now, if anybody comes up to you, we're going to pretend the rest of the day is I'm allergic to negativity day. All right. Anybody comes up to you and they're negative, I want you to tell them to shed up. Okay. Say it to me. Shed up. Okay. Shed up. And you want to shed the negativity and keep your positive attitude up. And all of these people who have ascended up, you all have positive, yeah, look at the little wings going. We can observe the little wings, positive wings going up there. So, all right. So now if you get negative or something like that, maybe your number goes off or something, and you go, I can't believe this. You could just snap yourself. Okay? Just a little snap by yourself. Tell yourself to shut up.
Shut up.
Okay, excellent. All right. Now let's move on. That's the mental enema. Now reframing the situation is seeing the situation from the most positive light. So what we'll be on is a short reframe quotient. We want to be able to quickly reframe and see things very, very quickly. You know, you don't want to say, you know, I'm so angry because my Zumba class was canceled 5 years ago. Still ticks me off. You want to be able to move through it quickly. So there's shedding, complaining. There's 4 others in the formula. We're focusing on the big one today because do you know the average person complains 15 to 30 times a day? 29 minutes on Monday. Today's Monday. I know there hasn't been any complaints, not from me at least, on this technical problems and stuff. No, not anything. Or anything. We haven't had any technical problems. No, we get upset about it. So the next are shedding. The third one is to refocus your energy. We're being asked to do more and more and more and more with what? Less and less and less and less. So it's all about managing your energy. That would be even more important than managing your time. And 3 different areas here. Recharge management, be in the now management, and control management. Let's talk about recharge management. No, there was some good discussion up a little while ago when we had the speakers in the morning about how you deal with all this in your life every day and how do you cope with it. You got to recharge. You know, they talked about different things, taking a walk and riding on their bikes and all that kind of stuff. Can I have my hands up? What's something you do to recharge? Hot tub, all right. Cook, what? Hot tub. I love a hot tub too. I'm sorry, I can't contribute. You're totally recharged and transformed over here. Okay. Now, I'm going to give you one recharge technique, and you've had this. It's the earliest technique you've had in your entire life. So everybody, I want you to sit up straight, hands down, feet on the floor, hands by your side, and I want you to put your left hand on your shed button. We told you about what the shed button was yesterday. That's evidence that you were born. You were there, all right? So what we're going to do is we're going to take 3 deep breaths, all right? So on the count of 3, you're going to blow up your stomach with your shed button, so like a balloon, and I'm going to say hold it, and then exhale, okay? And if you want a deeper experience, you can close your eyes, all right? Ready? Inhale. Exhale. Inhale. Exhale. Inhale. Exhale. And that will bring you back to the now. It gives your brain over 65% more oxygen so you can deal with challenging situations. And remember, you always got it on you. It only takes a minute or two to do it. All right, recharge every 90 minutes to 2 hours. So every time you think you may need to go to the bathroom or that little urge to move around, it's time to recharge in some way. Lenny says, take care of your body. Where else are you going to live? Right? I mean, we've been focusing on what happens when you shed your body the last few days. But most of you probably know somebody who's been evicted before their time from their body. So it's important for us to focus on taking care of it as best as possible. You know, eating healthy, sleeping, exercise, enjoying your family, love. How much have we talked about love the last few days? Give me the statistic. Anybody heard of Eckhart Tolle? The Power of Now.
Yeah.
He says that 93% of our thoughts are repetitive and useless. Think about it. 93%. He said most of the time when we're at work, we're thinking about something we're supposed to do at home. When we're home, we're thinking about something to do at work, and we're never where we are. So wherever you are, be there. And the last is control management. On the control scale, you can see on one level you have full control, on the other side you have no control, and somewhere in the middle you have influence. So where do most of us waste our energy? On those things we have no control over. So if you want to be a better energy manager, focus your energy on those things you can control or influence. So here's the 3 R's of rapid shedding. Say it with me together. First is to release the attachment. Second is to reframe the situation. And the third is to refocus your energy. Let's say you got a flat tire. It was raining on the way in, you get a flat tire. And you're probably saying, what? You can't say the word here in public? Okay. All right. You're probably not real happy. You're probably saying, oh, shed, right? Oh, shed, yeah. So we got to release that attachment, and you guys have to realize, you're not going to make your 8 a.m. meeting, right? So here, reframe the situation, all right? So how can we reframe that? We didn't want to go to the meeting anyway. Oh, that's a good reframe. Boy, you were doing well with that allergy bracelet on there. Didn't want to go to the meeting anyway. Hey, it's I got a spare tire. I got a cell phone.
Thank God I've got AAA.
You got AAA. That's a good one. Yeah. So what do we do? The third one, refocus your energy. You just call AAA. You call them and tell them you're not going to make it to the 8 a.m. meeting. Now, how long did it take to go through those 3 hours? Less than 60 seconds, right? But how many of us would let a flat tire ruin our entire day? So what we're going to do now is we're going to have you go into partner shares. So I'd like you to choose a partner, maybe it's beside you or in another table there. Everybody find a partner very quickly. Okay. What I'm going to ask you to do is I want you to share a significant loss or significant shed that you've had in your life. How did you deal with it? And then where are you with it today? Okay, share a significant shed, loss. How did you deal with it? And where are you with it today? Okay, we'll give you about 2 or 3 minutes. Would anybody like to share what was a significant shed for you and how did you deal with it and where you are now?
I think I've been reframing all my life. So I don't necessarily think back on loss because I'd already reframed it. And I'm gonna jump ahead. The last thing I need to detach from is my beliefs.
Last thing you need to detach from is your beliefs. beliefs and what?
Because I know better.
Ah.
And I can be an observer and a witness to dimensional experiences and events. And then I want to tell them what to do, how to do it.
Okay.
I didn't realize I had control issues, but I think God's got this, everything's fine. We're all fine.
All right, that's great. Let's give her a hand. Thank you for sharing. So you're a good reframer and you're allergic to negativity? Boy, you are like. I'm seeking. All right. Now, our next slide, we're going to talk specifically about unexpected death, because that's what our focus on is for today. And I've asked Kim if she would come, as she has had many, many, many unexpected deaths in her time.
It's so good to be here, and I just want to say hello to all the people in heaven, and I've got some people up there that I would like you to say hello to. So we're going to just try to change the slide. Here we go. We're going to talk about unexpected death. That's what we're here for. Well, you know, I mentioned yesterday I'm 68 years old, and I'm 68 years old, been around the block. We've all had a lot of unexpected things happen in our lives. And grief is a result not only of death, but also loss in general. So when I was born and was cut from that cord, I had my first unexpected loss, because a cord is probably expected by most people. My mother says the first thing that the doctor said when I was born was, all 10 fingers and toes, and then somehow a couple of them went missing, like right away as soon as I was born. And I had some spinal issues that they were a little concerned about. So my mother and my father, it was difficult for them. If your child isn't perfect, it's kind of difficult to be born. Really, in the scheme of things, those were minor situations compared to a lot of other people. But so I got started in loss like right away. So, you know, so I'm getting used to it now. The second loss I had was my parents' divorce when I was 3. And then when I was 6, we were living with my mother and my grandmother. And my mother was the best mother ever in the world. She was amazing. She was amazing. And we lived with her, and we lived with her and my grandmother. My mother went to work, and my grandmother stayed home and took care of us. And we were a happy family. We really were a happy family. In the meantime, my father had gotten remarried, but before he got remarried, he forgot to tell his new bride that he had 3 kids. Just kind of left it out until after they were married, right? But then he said, well, don't worry, I'm not going to take care of them because my daughter, my aunt is going to take care of them, so you don't have to worry about that. But in 1962, my father discovered the drug thalidomide, which my mother had taken in Cincinnati. It was being tried in Cincinnati, Ohio, one place in the U.S. She was driving across country. He was in the Navy, from the East Coast to the West Coast, stopped in her hometown of Cincinnati. Her friend who was pregnant had some thalidomide tablets that she had got from her uncle, who was working for the pharmaceutical company that was the only one testing it in the United States. And she'd been taking, this is great for morning sickness. It was given for morning sickness. And of course, my mother was driving, so she had morning sickness and motion sickness from driving. So she took some thalidomide tablets. And of course, we didn't know when I was born what had caused the problem. But of course, here in 1962, my father, in his wisdom, called my mother and said, it's all your fault. Kim is missing these fingers. You know, my dad actually was a rocket scientist. He designed missiles at the Pentagon, but emotionally, you know, he could have used a little help in some of these things. You know, he wasn't so great there. And my mother, at that time, who was already fragile, she was a little bit bipolar, already fragile, but a fabulous mother, went into the institution, just committed herself on a way she felt so overwhelmed with guilt. And Dad came and picked us up and took us back to his new bride, who didn't know he had kids when she got married to him, and then was promised she'd never have to take care of us, and was now 6 months pregnant. And he dropped us off at their home, and then ran on to the ship that he was commanding, left us with her 6 months pregnant. Well, you can imagine how it turned out, not so good. A few months later, my mother was out of the institution. She said, okay, Bob, I want the kids back. And he said, well, no, I'm not giving it back. I already bought the bedroom furniture. So too bad. So sad. My mother then, when you think about who had lost her children, and this, you know, once I'm a mother and now a grandmother, I have a deeper understanding of what that would be. Went back into the institution for the rest of her life. So I lost my mother at 6, physically. And then at 7, when I was 17, bipolar, they called it manic depression at the time, got the worst of her and she took her own life. And I lost her permanently at that time. And so I kind of had to deal with loss at a very early age. And as you can see, my mother was very beautiful. She was a hand model, so my hand thing was even a bigger deal. And she was loving, kind, caring, and compassionate. And if you look at that one picture, the little yellowish one there, she had the best chronic resting witch face of anybody I know, and it's passed down for every generation. I had, but ours didn't look so good. You know, I kind of when I'm sitting, I'm kind of, you know, and like my daughter has it, and my granddaughter has it. But mom had it. She really perfected it. She had it good. But she was absolutely the best mother, and anything good that I became in my life, I owe it to the first 6 years with my mother. She was an amazing woman. When she died, we went to the funeral home. Now, my father didn't tell us how she died. He just told us that she died. So they had to tell us at the funeral how she died, funeral home how she died. And at that time, because of the way she died, no church would give her a service. No church, none. And we were in that funeral home, and I just remembered at 17, and I just found out how she died. I walked into the funeral home, and my cousin told me he was just dripping with shame. It was just dripping with shame. And that's something that I really carried with me my whole life. The shame and the guilt of this loving, kind, caring, most godly woman I've ever met in my life. And this is how, because of the way she died, this is how she was treated. A few years later, 35 years later, I had, this time we had 3 children, Hillary, Ashley, and our youngest son was Eric. And Eric was an amazing young man. He was unbelievable. He had inherited my dad's rocket scientist brain. He was brilliant, but he was kind, caring, and compassionate. He had inherited my mother's kindness and love and caring. He was just this incredible kid. He was also incredibly talented. He was a major in high school. He was a lead in all the plays. He was a producer. He was a National Merit Scholar, and Columbia University recruited him. What the heck? Recruited him. They came after him. And he loved Columbia because he was also a brilliant jazz pianist. He wanted to study engineering and then play jazz piano in New York. Like, what the heck? Who does that, right? So he went on, he went to Columbia. He loved Columbia. He had the best first semester ever. He had been elected as student government at Columbia. Now, come on, it just keeps on going for this kid, right? He was playing in the plays with Barnard students, the girls' school right across the way. And he was playing in the jazz, he got made to the jazz programs. He was playing jazz piano all over the place. He was having a ball. And he was in love for the first time. And he came home for Christmas and he said, this is the best Christmas ever. He was on top of the world. He made the dean's list of engineering. I mean, what the heck? Everything was going his way. He was doing so well. We were so happy for him. We were so happy for him. And he made a name for himself at school, being kind, caring, and compassionate. In fact, they told us that the reason he got elected to student government was he was the only candidate that didn't badmouth the other candidates. He just said what he was going to do. Like, we could have used some people like that around here. Sometimes we're still suffering in that area. We could use a person like Eric. But 2 weeks into the next semester, just 2 weeks, and then 45 minutes after a breakup with his girlfriend, Eric took his life the same way my mother took hers. And we were shattered. Our whole family was shattered. I mean, I know all of you have had some sort of trauma in your life. We all have it, right? But this one shattered our world completely. The world just didn't make any sense. It just came out of the blue. And we couldn't eat, we couldn't sleep, and we didn't feel like we wanted to go on. And we would wake up in the morning, and some of you I'm sure have experienced this, where you wake up in the morning and you realize that reality is your very worst nightmare, right? You've been through this before. So that's where we were after that. We were devastated. However, unlike my mother, things have changed in the 35 years since my mother died. we're Baptist, my family's Baptist, Eric was very active in the church, and he went to a Catholic school. But he wasn't at that Catholic school anymore, he was at Columbia, he was at a different school, so he was out of that school. But on a Friday afternoon, St. Thomas Academy sent buses and buses and buses of young men, it was an all-boys military academy, buses of young men to a Baptist church in Burnsville, Minnesota, for Eric's funeral, and the teachers came, and he wasn't even there anymore, he didn't even go to the school anymore. He was moved on. But they closed this, basically, they didn't close the whole school down, they basically, because everybody was at the funeral. And when Eric, when we took the casket down for the last time, I'll never forget the amazing gift I got. When all those boys stood at attention in their dress uniforms and saluted his casket, and I get goosebumps every time I talk about it. It was an amazing gift. So obviously the Catholic Church had some different thoughts about this. My mother wouldn't even get a funeral anywhere in a church, and now they're busing kids to a Baptist church for a funeral for a kid that had taken his life. What the heck? Things have changed. Another thing that happened was there were thousands at his funeral. It was just incredible. They had to put him into extra rooms with videos. It was just, we have a big church. Then Columbia had a big rally for Eric. We went to Columbia, and they had a big memorial service where people were talking, and we got to meet his students, we got to meet them, we got to give his girlfriend a hug. It wasn't her fault. I mean, a breakup is a normal thing. You know, nobody caused this, it wasn't her fault. So we were able to go to Columbia, and they had a huge, there we go. And they even made us a book. You know, the Columbia students made a book, and I think one of the best things you can do for someone that has lost someone suddenly or not suddenly is to make a memory book. And this is just a couple of the pages that the Columbia students made for us and sent to us. They were wonderful. We had so much help and so much support after Eric died. And then 2 years later, they planted a shad bush, and a shad bush is a tree. Eric was this big guy. He's just a big guy. He was very giving and loving. He would give hugs, and he was just this great big old teddy bear. They used to call him the dancing bear. When he would direct the band, he would dance up on the big stand, in front of the marching band, he would be up there dancing, so they called him the dancing bear. And they planted this shad bush. The shad bush was specifically designed for Eric because it had flowers in the spring, it had berries in the summer. In the fall, the leaves were beautiful, turned beautiful colors, and then the berries that were on the tree in the winter fed the birds. So it was like the giving tree, and they specifically planted that for Eric as a permanent memorial at Columbia University in the middle of New York City, this little 19-year-old kid, right? And it's not because of the suicide, because there was 1 year, a couple of years later, 7 people took their lives there. Because suicide is endemic and an epidemic in all colleges right now. So there are times where people just don't know how to manage things, as Eric didn't know how to manage his life. And so when after Eric died, and I mentioned it yesterday, that a year after Eric died, I lost my dental job because I had nerve damage to my drilling fingers. I became a grief counselor, and I learned something that coordinated with Kubler-Ross's stages of grief. But it spoke to me a lot more because I like to do things, I like to have some power to get things done right in stages. Just doesn't work as well with me, and this one really hit me. It's called Worden's Tasks of Mourning. And they're tasks, and I like tasks, because tasks say, I can do something, I have to work for this, it's not just gonna happen to me, I just can't sit back and wait for things to happen to me. I kind of thought when Eric first died, I wanted to just be like Rip Van Winkle and go to sleep under a tree and wake up 20 years later and I'd be fine, right? But you're not, you know that, you have to work. So Worden's Task of Mourning came to me after that. And the first task, interestingly enough, is acceptance, which is the last stage of Kubler-Ross. Accept the reality of the loss. Now, this might seem like an easy thing to do, but it's not. It's not easy to accept a sudden loss that you're not expecting. It just came in. Your life is different. The world is different. It's hard to accept. The second task is a process of pain. Ouch. This is the bad task. It's a hard task. It's a task that sometimes takes years. And we all know processing grief is a difficult thing, and there's sometimes people can never do it. I mean, it's a very difficult thing to do. And we all know that the emotions from grief affect us physically. Now, after Eric died, I looked, my mother took her life, son took his life, I'm in the middle, I'm in trouble. So I got help for depression, I'm treated for depression now, and I'll be treated for depression the rest of my life, and thank God that there's treatment out there. My husband, on the other hand, was, I call him my Norwegian farmer, because he's kind of stoic, he's like, he's lower, man, he can handle things, right? So he had just had, when Eric died, he had just had a liver transplant 6 months ago, so he was recovering from a lot of physical things as well. And he would not get help for his depression. And before you get a liver transplant, they check out your heart, and if your heart doesn't check out well, you don't get a liver, right? Because they'll give it to someone else who doesn't have a good heart. Well, his heart checked out well before his transplant, and a year after Eric died, he was in the hospital undergoing quadruple bypass surgery and a valve replacement, a 4-hour surgery that took almost 11 hours to complete. It was kind of terrifying to wait for that to get over. And I really believe that part of that is because he didn't take care of his depression. We need to give each other permission to take care of emotional illness. And luckily, the next generation coming up is a little better in accepting health care. So the emotions are very difficult. They're very painful, physically painful. And you feel like the Walking Dead. I call it like the zombie phase. You walk around and you go back to work and you're like dead on the inside, and you're like trying to look like you're okay on the outside, right? Because you had to go back to work. And when you're a dentist, you see people every day, and everybody knew Eric, and everybody loved Eric. And they'd come up every day. Oh, I'm so sorry you lost Eric. And 20 or 30 times a day, you'd be facing that. So going back to work is very hard. So I spent a lot of zombie time trying to, thank you very much. And I was so glad they did that though, because it meant he was loved. And also part of your brain flies a coop. I think we have to realize that our brains are not functioning. They're on tilt when we're grieving, and they don't work, and the words don't come, and things happen, right? Because part of our brain is flown the coop there, and it's not what it should be. And we fall into the grief pit, right? On the bottom of the grief pit. When I was at the bottom of the grief pit, I was in the despair part. And I was down there, and I was just trying to suck up a little air in all the mud, mixed with mud. It was a terrible place to be. And when I was down there after Eric died, and I'd just been through Jim's transplant, my mother died, and Eric's death was complicated because it brought back my mother's death. And so I was down in the middle of the grief pit, and I thought, why do I even have to get out of this place? I keep getting thrown back in. I'm just going to stay here in my curtains, right? Bottom of the grief, that makes sense, right? But of course, it doesn't make sense. It really doesn't make sense. What I didn't know is that there were so many people out there waiting for me to come out that needed me. And I know a number of people, I think you do too, that can never get out of the grief pit. You can never get out. It's so hard. You have to work. It's not easy. But I had some help. I had some help in a very unexpected way. I came out of the office one afternoon, and I was walking down the office, and my husband was standing over by his car talking to his cousin, who was a patient. And they were involved in a serious discussion. And so I was kind of walking by to say hi, and all of a sudden, my cousin came forward to me and was pointing his finger in my face and was angry, and his voice had pain in it. And he said, "Don't you ever make your children believe that they are not enough. Don't you do that to your remaining children." Oh, it was like a lightning bolt hit. Because he had lost his brother at about the same age that I had lost Eric. And when he lost his brother, he felt that he lost his parents at the same time. And he was warning me. He was warning me what could happen. He didn't even go to his mother's funeral. I mean, they were stricken forever. And I looked at my husband, who was challenged already physically and emotionally. And I thought of my 2 daughters who were just struggling to get by. And I realized that my pain reflects onto them as well. My grief reflects onto them. At that moment, I became determined to get out of that grief pit, to crawl and kick and scream and scratch my way out of that place as best I could, just work and work and work for myself and for my family, for everybody around me. The grief pit's a terrible place to live, by the way, and you know, all hope is gone, you can't, even small tasks, if you know, feel like you just can't even get out of bed in the morning, you just can't even work, they're overwhelming. It's a terrible place to live. But I would have lived there for a while had I not been worried to get out, frankly. And getting out of the grief pit is terrible. It's hard. It takes years, took me years, and sometimes you fall back in. But I've been able to breathe the fresh air again and live in the present. And it is a much, much, much better place to live. Living in joy is so much better than living in fear. So after you get out of that grief pit, when you process the grief, it might take you some time. Task number 3 is to adjust to the new world and establish your own identity. Now this is the thing when it comes to grief, because when you lose somebody, you lose part of your identity. When I lost my mother, I was really no longer a daughter. When I lost my son, I was, no longer the mother of a boy. I had girls, but I didn't have a boy. Then I lost my job, so there went my, professional identity went right there. And then, a few years later, I lost my husband, and I was a widow. So what the heck? So how do you adjust all those things? But again, just like the grief pit, it takes work. So I learned to adjust, to find new things, find new identity. The world that I had expected to retire to when my husband was alive was completely different. We had a cabin on the lake, and the kids were going to inherit it. The grandkids would love the cabin. And then my husband died, and I didn't want to go to the cabin by myself. And my kids didn't really want the cabin because it was so much upkeep. It was far away. So I don't have the cabin anymore. But I have freedom now. I'm going to work, establish myself part-time in Kansas City, part-time in Minneapolis, so I can be with all 6 of my grandchildren, 3 up the top, 3 at the bottom. I'm going to go back and forth, and I'm so excited. I live in joy with because I have that. And I wouldn't have had that had I not really worked hard to establish my identity. Task number 4. Now, I kind of think Kessler might have stolen this from Wharton. I'm just saying, because they added this to Kubler-Ross, but Wharton had this a long time ago, and that was to build a new life. Build a new life. Remember your loved ones. Remember the people that you have. Remember, I have a place in my heart for Eric. I also have 65 libraries in Rwanda, and Eric Harms and more libraries. I remember my husband. I remember my mother. I've written books and dedicated it to them. I remember them and I keep them in a good place. But I live my life with no shroud anymore. I don't have that shroud hanging over me. I live my life in joy, and my grandchildren benefit from it, and I benefit from it because it's so much better to be in joy than it is to be in grief. Now, the other question is it easier to mourn an unexpected death or an expected one? And that's a tough question. There's really no answer to it. But in my experience, when my husband died, he almost died every year for 10 years because he had a lot of issues, medical issues, and he lost all of his blood one year and almost died then. And then he had septic shock and then a heart attack while he was in a coma and intubated, and he had diabetic comas, and he had multiple heart surgeries, one time almost dying in Kansas City. He had so many times throughout those last 10 years that I kind of thought he was going to die, but he didn't until he did, right? Until he did. And when I take a look at the grief, I think that my grief, because I could anticipate it for 10 years, and I knew I was probably going to be a widow someday, could anticipate it for 10 years, it seemed to be a little easier for me because I could anticipate. It was still hard, it still took time, but it didn't take about almost 10 years it took for me with my son. So I think that question is up for debate, and it just depends on the situation.
Hey, Kim?
Yes.
Maybe, how does the audience feel about that? Is it harder to grieve one or the other?
What do you think? Is it harder to grieve one than the other?
I think it's different
Mm-hmm.
after, it's different because as part of my sister who lost her husband, she had time to prepare. So she took care of some of the grieving as it was happening. So she was preparing herself, where my other sister didn't. And yes, it's different. You can't really compare the two. It's different process.
Anybody else? Unexpected.
Because even with a spiritual perspective of knowing that's where we're going, the shock of oops, this wasn't what was supposed to happen seems harder to cope with than, oh yeah, they're done.
Pain is the same.
The pain is the same, oh, I like that, the pain is the same, well, that's a book.
I lost my mother when I was 7. She had a heart attack right in front of me. And it was unexpected. So that was that one. The one that's expected is I'm a lesbian. And I carry a lot of shame still because of societies. And so mine is expected grief and shame because every day there's always something that I could expect. That subject would either be not talked about or I'm not comfortable enough being out. And so on both of those experiences.
So after an unexpected death, there's just some things you can do after an unexpected death. And the first one is just give yourself permission to just kind of feel it's okay to have this experience and just know that pain is part of it. It's normal. And don't beat up on yourself when your brain goes crazy and do crazy things. I used to count children after Eric died. I would say, oh my gosh, he's got 3 kids. I used to have 3 kids, but I only have 2 kids now. Right? How can he's got 3 kids. I wish I had 3 kids. And then I see somebody with 2 kids and go, oh, he has 2 kids and they look like they're okay. They seem to have made it with just 2 children. You know, and crazy. I don't do that anymore, by the way. So just in case you're wondering, I don't do that anymore. But the first year, it's just your brain is crazy. And so give yourself permission to just know it's going to be a little crazy for a while. And show yourself that grace and patience. Give yourself some grace. One of the best things to do is give yourself the grace you would give your friend. You know, I know for myself when I did something, I'm just so done. And I would never say that to a friend. If a friend asked me for advice, I'd say, oh no, you're just doing great. Tell yourself what you would tell your friend. And then regular routines, Kathy mentioned, keeping physically and emotionally healthy, eating well, doing all those things physically. Those always help when you're battling an unexpected loss. Any loss, those always help. And then of course, fight the pit. I'm going to get it. Fight the pit, fight the pit, fight the pit. And speaking of fighting, yes.
Well, one of the things I wanted to say is 2007 was a major shedding year for me. Some expected, some unexpected. And I didn't do it alone. I was getting spiritual counseling every week with my rabbi. I was seeing a wonderful therapist every week named Kathy. I was journaling. I was also checking in frequently with my primary care physician, who was a woman. I was walking to a creek that was really close to my house and sitting by the water and crying a lot. So, it was the gestalt of all of that helped me navigate my grief and get to a place almost exactly a year later of creating a whole new life for myself. So I just want to say, you're not doing that by yourself, hopefully.
And the way I met Kathy, this is the last slide, Kathy. The way I met Kathy was we had this mutual friend named Naomi Brody, who 2 days after my husband died, gave me a call and said, I felt God direct. She wasn't a widow. She had a husband. I felt God direct me to help start a widows group. And because a lot of my friends had become widows, and would you like to join? This is 2 days after my husband died. I said, heck yes. And I joined that the next week. And who should I meet on that first call but Kathy Dempsey? That's how I got to meet her. And we've been meeting for 4 years, every week for 4 years. And that has been one of the keys to my healthy survival after my husband died. And I didn't really have that after my son died. I eventually did find some suicide groups, because you have to kind of meet people that have been through the same thing a little bit later, and that really helps. But finding support groups, I'm just a big believer in support groups. And so Kathy, you're on next. See that?
All right, let's give Kim a hand for everything. Sharing from her heart, and she's gone through a lot of shedding, unexpected shedding, as many of you have too, I'm sure. Adaptation to life. I don't know what glasses on so I can breathe here. which are my, I shed my purple ones that you found my purple?
No.
Oh, no, I lost my purple glasses. I think I can find them. I shed them unexpectedly. But I have backups. But in my book, Shed Your Dead, 31 Unconventional Strategies for Growth or Change. And some of you got that yesterday, but it was my first book out almost 20 years ago. It's still my most popular, but it's outlining things I learned being an administrator of psychiatry. But some of the chapters are be psychotic, hallucinate, be obsessive, be pessimistic, don't wear clean underwear, lose your memory, know it all. Anyway, one of the chapters again is be a control freak. And you were just talking about that, right? It's a new thing. Anyway, but it's all these different things. What do psychotic people do? They hear voices, right? So what can we learn from those people who hear voices? Well, we can learn inside of us. We've got an inner voice. Some people call it our gut, spirit, our intuition. But so often we don't listen to that inner voice. So chapter 30 is the control freak. Now control freaks want to control everything, don't they? Everything, everybody, right? There's me, all right. So what can we learn from being a control freak? And that is that you have 100% control, not over every situation, but 100% control over how you respond. Just like that controls, we put up a few minutes ago, control management. And I wanted to share with you, because when I was writing this book, I read a book called Adaptation to Life. And it was written in 1977 by George Valiant, who was actually a psychiatrist. And I got to actually meet him and interview and talk to him when he came to the Tennessee Psychiatric Association meeting. But it was a long-term study of the brightest of the bright. Research took 40 years and 100 men's lives from Harvard University. As they grew up, they interviewed them every single year. What happened to them and how did they respond to what happened to them? And what they found was remarkable. Some of the men had traumatic events of death, divorce, financial troubles, and all kinds of problems. And when they interviewed them, they were functioning well. Then on the other hand, some of the men in the study had most of what we might consider as very few losses or stressors. And oddly enough, upon interviewing them, they found a lot of mental illness, sickness, dysfunctional relationships, and suicide. The study suggests that it's not the events that happen to you, but how we respond or cope to them that matters. Those skills. And so I wanted to share with you, as we're talking about shedding and all our losses and unexpected deaths today in particular, what are the 5 healthiest coping skills that came out of this 40-year study that the book was written? First one is altruism. And what is that? That is helping somebody else. And you know, when you get down, it's always, you feel better when you help somebody else, right? And some of you are in the helping profession, and that's what you do. You help other people, and it's one of the healthiest coping skills. If you balance it with being altruistic to yourself, too, right? And good care, good self-care. The second one is humor. Oh man, humor is one of the most underrated. We don't even realize how good humor is to our body. Sends all those endorphins up. And Kim and I were driving home, and something happened, and we got locked out of our Airbnb, and we had all these bags, and it was raining, and we just started laughing so hard our stomachs were hurting. I mean, it was just a great way to let out all the stress that we were like trapped. We were going to be sleeping on the side of the road somewhere that night. Okay, third one, and go back to the second one, is have a humor friend. I mean, if you have a list of friends, I have some that I want to call when I just want to cry. Want to be in my little pity party. But I also have one, Karen Buxman, who actually introduced me and said, you gotta call Kim, you gotta call him, you gotta call him. But she's a humorist. And if I just want to laugh, I will text her something, or I'll call her, and we'll just start laughing. So that's one of the arsenals you can have, is just make sure you engage in having a good humor friend. The third one is suppression. And suppression is not that you're in denial, or that it's not that you're depressing it. You're actually, remember how Gone with the Wind, that last scene, frankly, my dear, I'll deal with this tomorrow, was basically what it says. So it's, you prioritize the stresses. You can't deal with all of them at the same time, but you suppress and deal with them in each healthy way at its own proper time. All right, the next one is anticipation. And that's future planning for unexpected events, just like we were talking about for this entire day. Unexpected deaths. And even as Kim was talking about, that anticipatory grieving with her husband, of probably she was going to be most likely a widow one day, was very helpful in her grieving process. So anticipatory grieving can be very, very, very healthy. And the last one is sublimation. And that is, you're dealing with a lot of stress, you may be dealing with unexpected deaths or unexpected challenges, and you sublimate that into something that's healthy. Like for me, when I get up in the morning, I put on my ball cap and my bike pants, and my tennis shoes, and I put Gabriel on my side pack, and I hop on my bike, and we take a 10-mile ride around the lake. And that's how I sublimate. Sometimes people put it into hobbies or in other ways, but it's sublimating the negative stressors into a positive way. Look at Kim yesterday. She talked about all her stuff that she paints and the china and all that, and how that is really sublimated and been really healthy for you. So as you look at those, turn to the person next to you and share with them which one is one that you may need to prioritize and do a little bit more focus on, just in your small groups at your tables. Any comments of which one of the 5? Back, yes. Sublimation, okay? That's a good one. What else? Humor, yeah. You know what? I have this file on my phone for memes, funny memes, and if I seem to be getting into a little funk about something, I'll just click on the funny memes, or I'll text them to one of my friends, to try to make them laugh, and they'll send something funny back to me. But that sublimation really works. So the interesting thing when I interviewed George Valiant is, like, he says that all of these coping mechanisms are, and if you want to look up more about, there's psychotic ones, immature ones, mature ones, and the healthiest ones. And he said all the coping mechanisms are healthy at a certain age. Like denial, it is healthy, if you're 3 years old, that you deny that you took the cookie out of the cookie jar, right? And it's okay, it's okay, and it's healthy for a 3-year-old. It's not for a 30-year-old. And it's healthy to be in fantasy if you're 3 years old and you have a real live pet or something that you think is really a stuffed animal. Not that I think Lenny's alive, but he is alive in my mind. And I'm on medication for that too. But anyway, but he says all these are unconscious. And I challenged him. I said, but what if, and this was over 25 years ago when we had the conversation, I said, what if I took the 5 healthiest and I consciously built them into my life? And he said, wow, what a strong, resilient person you would be. So I'm just going to challenge you to think about how you can incorporate these 5 healthiest coping mechanisms to give you that strength, skills, and resilience to deal with whatever happens, whatever unexpected death or incident or shedding experience that you're not wanting in your life. So right now, we're probably going to do something that you're not really expecting, and that is that you're actually all going to die. Okay, so I'm sorry, this is a bummer way to end the afternoon after lunch, but okay, everybody put your pens down and I want you to sit up straight. Put your hands on your lap, uncross your knees, and you are going to actually, this is the end of your life, okay? And I'm gonna ask you to close your eyes, and I want you to imagine that you're at the end of your life. And we're gonna go into a guided imagery. And I want you to be with it and feel everything and every emotion that comes up.
No one has ever prepared us for this experience. We think it's the end. No. It's another beginning. Another beginning. It's knowing that you loved. Knowing that you loved. It's not easy letting yourself be loved. Of course, we've learned to judge ourselves. And we're always judging ourselves. But I learned to listen that I was loved. I was loved. And then I would forget that I was loved. Those were the most painful times for me. Forgetting that I was loved. So you've let yourself be loved while you've been here. And you've judged yourself. And you've forgotten that you were loved. And you became alone. But you will always be here. You are blessed. You are forgiven. You are an angel. You have to listen that you're loved. And you have to forgive all the time. Listen that you're loved. And forgive all the time. You are love. Farewell, my son. Farewell, my daughter. Farewell, my father. Farewell, my mother. Farewell, my sister. Farewell, my brother. Thank you for letting me love you. Thank you for letting yourself be loved. God bless you.
So accepting how much love has been given to us. If we allow death to be our teacher, and we practice dying like we just did for the last 5 minutes, how much more can we, as Ron Black would say, die well by living well today? I told you just to relate that. Whatever happened in your experience is a gift. What is it saying to you? That wise person that's inside you. I could turn to the person next to your table and just maybe share what was the most significant thing about your practice dying. Okay, thank you very much. Who would like to share something about your practice dying session?
It really was one main word that came up, and it was curious. I was curious about, because when I die, I'm curious about what's next, and I have the clue. So yeah, it was curiosity. Curiosity. Peace came before that. What before that? Peace. Okay, anybody else in the table?
Really?
Absolutely. We don't hold a sense of homesickness or longing to any place on earth. But since my own near-death experience, it's very much a sense of longing and homesickness. So it's very much that sense of like.
Thanks for sharing. Who else would like to share?
My experience was similar as far as relief, but the other thing is, I always tell my clients if they do indicate they believe in an afterlife, I always, as time getting closer, I say, have you invited who you want to meet you? Because it's an invitation already been. And so as we did this meditation, I was surprised that you all came. People I hadn't thought of inviting, so as they appeared, I was like, oh yes, you, wait, you. So a whole bunch more people got invited to my.
Awesome. So you had a little bit more party invitations going out there. All right, excellent. Well, I do want to say that this is a CD, and it was created. I met the musician Michael Stillwater in Switzerland in the 90s, and he was getting together with all these Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, Ram Dass, Lou Epstein was the one that just did You Are Loved. And it's got probably 8 or 9 songs on it. On one part of the CD, it's only song music only. The other, it's music with words. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross's I Love, it's a little hard to hear with her accent, her strong Swiss accent that she has. But I wanted to give you a taste of this because it's a wonderful tool, graceful passages. And what I did with Michael is he would do some of the songs with Elizabeth Kubler-Ross and different music, and they try different things. And then I would try them with audiences and have audiences practice dying. And then I would give them feedback on which ones that they liked. I played different ones at different times. So I would highly recommend it as a tool for you, for people you may be working with, or family members, or loved ones, or friends. I played it with my dad who died, and I've used it with several other people. So it's a really good tool. It's called Graceful Passages. And, well, he's the one who constructed a lot of music, but there's different people that talk through it, like Lou Epstein did on You Are Loved. And Elizabeth Kubler-Ross is comes to the end. It's not how much you got or given, it's how much you love. So similar messages with the different very, very well-known people that you would know. All right, I think, Kim, it is time. 14:39. I think it's time to maybe open up and talk to these people who have ascended. So would you kind of like to hear about what their experiences were? Or, so who would like to talk? I mean, some of you have been out an hour and a half almost, right? You were first. So would you like to share anything about what you experienced?
To say you are loved in green, in that dark, dark green, it feels like a message from the masculine part of the universe. That we crave hearing that. We crave hearing that, and that color is illuminating with a black background to imprint in that brilliant green, and the negativity turned around for me about that color because it's full of elements now. I'm an element of things I can actually.
So you felt some masculine, your love that you had really felt before?
Because a lot of the world associates the universe with the masculine, like God, the Father, or what have you, which I don't feel. I don't feel any of that. But today, because the way it was presented, it actually helped me to understand more, to be okay with that.
Oh, it's wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. All right, how about some of the rest of you? How did you feel about having your alarm clock go off? How did you feel about having to sit over here and not being able to participate? And you saw all of them taking notes and having these conversations.
You get to take notes. Yeah, it's very sudden. And this made me realize that I need to tell people I love them every day.
Yeah,
Every day. There was no goodbyes, were there? No, so you were grieving the no goodbyes. Okay.
One of the things I didn't say was that in our family, every time we get off the phone or leave each other, we say, I love you, it's just natural, all of us. So when my son died, the last he had heard from every member of his family was that we loved him. So that was very comforting. So I think when you do that, you just never know what's gonna happen. So just don't take for granted anytime you have people. But that was so helpful for us as we were trying to recover from that.
Anybody else? Your experience of having your number called?
I don't know, okay, wasn't expecting it, but.
Yeah.
So, but we need to make sure that all my ducks are in a row. Because it will be called.
Yeah. Do what?
That's why she got the book.
That's what you got you all got stuff. What did you get? I mean, you had your graduation party there. Did you get some cool stuff? What did you get there? Oh, you got a little Lenny, one of his little offsprings there. Okay, what else did you all get? You got heavenly hunks, oatmeal chocolate chip. Oh wow, that's awesome. What else did you get? You get what? You got you more. What did you get there? You got some chunks there. Did you get a book too? What did you? Oh, you got a Shed of Your Dead book. Awesome. And you got 52 questions book. Awesome. You all got really some good rewards when you left us. So, but we missed you. Yeah, and it was very unexpected.
Welcome back.
Welcome back. Yeah. Welcome back. All right. So, any comments from the audience of what you experienced when the alarm went off and your number might have been called, but wasn't? Yeah, what were you thinking?
I wanted to go.
Ah, you wanted to go. You wanted to go too. You wanted to be called. Anybody else? You wanted to go too? You know, it's interesting because most audiences wants to go, that's kind of strange, like me too, because I'm just thinking it's going to be another amazing adventure. And I just, you know, I'd like to stay around a little bit if I could, because I have some friends and things I like to do. But I'm ready. I'm totally ready when my number is called. So let's just give everybody a hand again for participating in the unexpected death. I just want to share this with you. The book that sold out yesterday was the kids' book, and I just didn't bring enough of them. And then I got back to the Airbnb and I found one left. So if anybody wants one of the kids' books for shedding, but I just wanted to give you one of the tips in one of the things that is in that book is the Shed to Move Ahead. Lenny's message is emotional CPR, and it's check in with your feelings: happy, sad, angry, scared. There's no wrong feelings. Plug in and recharge, and find positive ways. You know, there's positive things we talked about, what you did, some of those things to sublimate, but there's also negative ways. Usually it's the over stuff, overeating, over drinking, over technology, over, Facebook, over. And so we need to find those positive ways. The negative ones will work short term, but long term, they usually have more consequences. So try to find those positive ways. And then ours, rely on your 911 support team. And yeah, go back to the 911 support team right there. And so when I did research for this book, and I interviewed a lot of kids, both probably all the way from 5 to 15 on this, and most of the kids, even the teenagers, their support team, they had a pet or a stuffed animal that was on their 911 support team that they talked to first. And I know Kim will not tell that I actually did bring my prayer bear with me. I bring them on trips, and we did say a prayers last night. Now I lay me down to sleep, and so I sleep with my own prayer bear. So I do have non-humans on my 911 support team, especially when I'm traveling alone. But this is a card that you or a kid could carry or electronically. What is your family? The name, contact information, friends, professionals. And when you get into a crisis and need that emotional support, rely on your 911 support team. Kim was mentioning Naomi Rhodey, who you saw introducing Bob on the film yesterday, the beautiful woman in the dark hair. And I remember when Ron was diagnosed, she sat and I was crying. I was just sobbing. We were like at Panera Bread. And she took out a little piece of paper and she said, okay, 4 to 12 months. That was her prediction of how long he was going to live. And she said, all right, who's going to be on your advisory board? She put down my doctor, my financial planner, my friends, my family, and I carried that thing around in my wallet with the contact information for almost those 11 months that Ron lived. And it was really, really helpful. So next slide, please. So resources and reminders. Hopefully we've given you those today. Lots of resources and reminders. Some things you probably say, I knew that, but I just haven't been doing it, right? And then a lot of resources. So next click here. So if you scan this code here, it'll take you to a place that you can get lots of resources and reminders. It'll give you posters, the emotional CPR that you can just download and print off free, permission given. A lot of school systems use the emotional CPR. It'll give you a 5-video series on shedding. And it'll give you downloadable handouts that you can do with your team or you can do by yourself. It's got the mental enema, the guidelines and sign-up sheet. So if you've got a team and you want to do the I'm allergic to negativity, you can see the rules and the sign-up sheets, and people really have a lot of fun with that one. But we're always adding resources. So if you find some things on the resources there, download them and share them with other people. And if you don't see anything you like, then just shed. Just shed. As we come to the conclusion, I didn't have all these skill sets that we talked about today. And I didn't have all these coping skills back when I started my career. And it almost cost me my life. It was 1987. And life was good. I was at work and the phone rang. Dr. Ghazali? Yes, I'm fine. Yeah, I'm just here giving the patient some medication. Sure, I'd be glad to take some test results. I've just been given my death sentence. AIDS. You see, I was a nurse working in an emergency room and a trauma patient came in. We ended up cracking this guy's chest and my hands were wrist deep inside. And I happened to have a cut on my finger. And believe it or not, as many of you know, back in the mid-80s, we didn't wear gloves. The doctor said, calm down. We're going to run confirmatory tests. But weeks later, all the confirmatory tests also came back positive. Next thing I know, the CDC is involved, and I'm about to become their poster child. You see, I was the first healthcare worker in the United States to test positive from an on-the-job exposure. I sat down and told my boss. She was so sympathetic. I said, Kathy, if this news gets out, this hospital will shut down. I'm sorry, you can't work here anymore. I can't do what I love to do. And then I sat down and told some people at my church. And they alienated me. They were like, oh, should we even touch her? But as you can imagine, I was not coping well. I stopped eating, I stopped sleeping, I stopped taking care of myself, all those things that we talked about earlier today. My lowest point was one night in graduate school. I was taking a course on human sexuality. And I walked in and the professor said, okay, everybody take your seats. We're going to watch a video called Living with AIDS. And I sat there watching people waste away on the screen. My classmates were blown away with it. Little did they know who was sitting next to them. Well, I left class that one night. My mind started racing. It was racing around a track called regrets. Regrets that I hadn't taken enough time for my family and friends. I was always too busy. Regrets that I hadn't taken care of even finding out who Kathy Dempsey was. Well, I ended up in a hotel parking lot. It was dark and rainy. I just sat there. I pulled a bottle of sleeping pills out of my purse. 2, 6. I haven't seen too many people survive. And then I was filtered back to reality with 3 knocks on my car door window. It was someone from out of nowhere. Are you okay? But that woman got in the car and she held my hand and she helped me get through the night. Oh, I'd like to tell you that after that, I was doing fine. I was still pretty bumpy. Fast forward 3 months later. I'm sitting at home in my living room, watching my new TV set. The phone rang. Guess who it was? He said, Kathy, I don't know what to say. But all of your tests, all 8 of your tests have come back negative. You're not HIV positive. I just stared into the new TV set. I should have bought the extended warranty. Seriously. Some people call it a medical error. I call it a miracle. Actually, one AIDS doctor said there's a Black woman in Africa that seroconverted from positive to negative. There's so many tests and so many labs, it seems to be hard to be a medical error, but I call it a miracle, a double miracle. First of all, somebody found me in the car, right? And then all my tests come back negative. I mean, if you think about it, all those regrets I had back in the car, now I could do something about it. I mean, it was like a VCR, and I get to push those old VCRs, you get to push reset. Just fell on my knees, and at 25 years old, I said, I will not live my life the same way again. And then we focus on trying to build the skills that we talked about today. So when other crises and shedding things happen, challenges in my life, that I'm armed with those skills that I didn't have in my 20s. So I'm wondering, what would you do? Would you have any regrets? What would they be? What picture comes to mind? Somebody may say, I used to jump out of bed and I could not wait to go to work or go wait to volunteer, and now it kind of just drains my energy. Well, maybe it's time to share. Somebody may say, I've always wanted to go back to school. I want to get another degree. I just talked to somebody at lunch who's getting this PhD in funerals of the future and all that's happening here in the United States, and he came over from England. Some of you say, I've been in a toxic relationship for a long time. I need to share. And some of you may say, I'm trying to control everything and everybody all the time. It's driving me crazy. Oh, those adult kids, they come back, and oh my. And some of you may say, I'm taking care of myself. I'm not eating right, I'm not sleeping right, I'm not exercising. I take care of everybody else but myself. So I'm going to challenge you to just take 60 seconds, and on that little card in the back, I'd like you to just take a moment to think about, what do you want to share?